Hey guys, Quarian here back again with another video. We're playing Mass Effect Andromeda, and this is going to be the topic of the video. It's going to be Mass Effect Andromeda again. In this video, I'm going to be talking about why the multiplayer of this game died so quickly, why it died off so quickly, why it's no longer really relevant. I still love it. I still think it's an amazing game. The multiplayer and the single player I still think is amazing, but it did die off very quickly. You know, there's some games out there with multiplayer fan bases that just last for 5, 6, 7 years. You know, even like things like Halo Reach. That's been out for what, 5 years? I think it's been out for 5 years, nearly 6, and that's still got a multiplayer fan base. That's still got a multiplayer player base, and this game's still got people playing it, obviously. But the player base really just died ever since the release of that, and part of that is due to obviously the all the idiots that just sort of rode the bandwagon of dissing Mass Effect Andromeda. Which was born from, I did a couple of videos on this, but which was born from critics, like critics in articles and videos on YouTube and stuff, trying to bash the game just for attention. It gets some views, it gets some likes, it gets them attention because it's a popular game, and they're insulting it or saying something negative about it. It gets them a lot of attention. That is that sort of constitutes a large part of the hate or sort of the fan base dying off for Mass Effect Andromeda and the multiplayer of Mass Effect Andromeda. But there are a few other reasons, and they are what I'm going to be talking about in this video today. Now, one of those reasons is how limited the multiplayer is. In Mass Effect 3, the multiplayer was, well, basically exactly the same as Mass Effect Andromeda's multiplayer. There's a few tweaks here and there. Obviously, there's different combat dynamics, combat mechanics. It feels different. It looks a lot better. It plays a lot better, obviously, but like the sort of the base theme of it is a Horde mode type, a multiplayer Horde mode type mode, and that's it. And Horde mode game modes, really, they're fun, and sometimes they can be immensely fun. This multiplayer is immensely fun, and the Gears of War Horde modes, for example, very, very fun too, but they're not great as like a standalone multiplayer mode. They should be like one of a couple of multiplayer modes. They shouldn't be the single multiplayer mode on offer, because they do get stale and repetitive quite quickly. They're still fun. I could play this this multiplayer for 10 hours non-stop. I'd still enjoy it. But the problem is, a lot of the time, they're very linear. They're very like straightforward. It's like there's a lot of in Horde modes, it's like one spot in the map that you need to stand to really survive. It lasts for ages, and survive every wave and stuff. There's one spot in the map that you need to stand, or that you should stand if you want to survive and get as many kills or get as many points. Blah blah blah. And that makes it very restricting, very basic. Because, for example, on this map, if I was just playing however I wanted to play, say if there's a ton of enemies here, I was just running down, attacking, point blank attacking, I would get wrecked, I would get destroyed, unless I'm playing on bronze, which I am right now, just so I don't die too much in this video. The best thing to do on this map would be to stick up, up here, or this platform, this area down here. That's what you'll see most players on this map hanging out, because that's the most sort of the strategically advantageous spot on the map. And that's the same with any Horde mode, with any map on any Horde mode based game or based multiplayer. It's the same, it's always the same. And the problem with that is that's not the only thing that's basic. That's not the only thing that's basic with Mass Effect Andromeda's multiplayer, or with the Horde mode multiplayer, for example. Like enemies, they never really switch up. They've always got the same AI. You're always fighting enemies with the same AI. And like I said before, staying in the same spot of the map, staying in the same sort of region of the map. The problem with that is if you're in the same spot on the map all the time, and you're playing against the same enemies with the same AI and the same programming and the same code, they're always going to attack in the same way. They're always going to attack down the same routes, in the same manners, and in the same sort of using the same sort of strategies. And like I said, it does make for kind of like a stale experience after a while, especially on Platinum. Platinum is a very fun difficulty, Platinum difficulty, the hardest difficulty on Mass Effect Andromeda, or Gold even. Very fun, it's very challenging, and obviously it's very awesome, but the thing is, you just stood up there, say that you're fighting against Platinum level enemies, say a boss, for example, like a destroyer, if you're playing against a remnant, for example, and all your team's just up here, you're just drilling into a destroyer, and it's fun and everything. There's weak spots and there's different tactics to take down a destroyer or take down any kind of an enemy, the fastest way possible and everything, and the most effective way possible. But at the end of the day, you're just drilling bullets into the same enemy that you fought in 100 different matches in the exact same way, in the exact same spot. It gets very repetitive, and the way that they could have fixed this is not only by putting a different mode into the game, a different multiplayer mode into the game, but also PvP. Like player versus player, it very rarely gets old. It very rarely gets stale. You know, there's things like Battlefield 1, for example, or Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront, things like that. Player versus player, they're made in such a way that they don't really ever get boring. They can get stale sometimes, and obviously, like any game, you'll need a break from them eventually. If you play it, you know, too damn much. But the thing is that because of the way it's built and because of the nature of that player versus player mode, it never really gets boring because there's always a different situation and you're always playing against a different person in a different situation, and it always makes for a different sort of experience, a different situation, like I said. But playing against AI, it can be tricky. Well, not tricky, but it can be repetitive. It's tricky and difficult to keep that sort of, to keep it fresh and to keep it always enjoyable and make it so there's a different situation every time. If you're playing against the same, like I said, the same AI NPC characters, non-player characters, you're playing against the same AI and, you know, in the exact same spots and the exact same maps. There's only so many situations that you can have. There's only so many experiences that you can have before you've seen everything. And, you know, you've done everything. And like I said, on Gold and Platinum, that's even worse because enemies generally are a lot more brutish and tankish. Even the weakest of enemies can take a lot more damage, which just results in players just standing, you know, drilling into enemies as many bullets as they can. And obviously there's weak spots on enemies. There's little, you know, there's certain parts of the enemy that you can shoot to do more damage. But like I said, if they attack in the exact same way, the exact same sort of plan and strategy, then it just gets boring eventually. If you're stood in the exact same spot of the map, it does get boring eventually, and player versus player modes don't really face that issue. Some, like Call of Duty, for example, I just hate Call of Duty. I think it's so boring, and I think the player versus player multiplayer on that is very, very limited and very basic. But for ones that are more expanded, you know, Battlefield, Halo, what's another example? Battlefield, Halo. I can't think of another example right now, but anything really that's got an expansive sort of multiplayer, player versus player multiplayer, never really gets boring. You might go off the game eventually, you might, you know, get bored of the game eventually, but the thing is, it's always going to offer like a magnitude of different situations and different experiences, which means that it never really gets boring. You can jump on. I still play Halo Reach. Like I said, it's been out for it's been out for over half of a decade now. And I still find it fun because of it, the way it's built and because of the nature of its player versus player multiplayer. I still find it fun, I still find it enjoyable. But things like, say, for example, Gears of War 3 Horde mode, because I played a lot of that when it first came out, Gears of War 3 Horde mode, kind of similar to Mass Effect Andromeda and Mass Effect 3's multiplayer. I cannot play that anymore because it's got repetitive and pretty boring, and I don't really find it that fun anymore, just because it's quite limited and, you know, quite straightforward and quite basic, like any Horde mode really is. If you go on Gears of War 3 now, and go on Gears of War 3, I think that's actually newer than Halo Reach. In fact, if you go on Gears of War 3, there will be hardly anyone playing Horde mode. I doubt there will be any players worldwide playing the multiplayer Horde mode. Game mode. I don't think anyone will be playing that because the lifespan of Horde mode type game mode, it just doesn't work. They don't last very long. Like I said, they should always be like a supplemental game mode. There should always be something, either like a secondary multiplayer game mode instead of the primary game mode. For example, Halo Reach, again bringing back the Halo Reach sort of metaphor or similarity analogy. With Halo Reach, there's a Horde mode in that. It's called Firefight, and it's really, really good. When you get bored of that, when that gets stale, and like I said, generally all Horde mode, you know, game types do get stale eventually, a lot faster than player versus player game types. When you get bored of that, you can just go on player versus player multiplayer and fight against, you know, real people in completely different game modes and completely different maps and completely different situations, and that's entertaining. Then that you know, that completely refreshes it, and that's really entertaining because it's not an AI Horde mode thing or anything. And that's the problem with Mass Effect Andromeda and Mass Effect 3. With Mass Effect 3, it was kind of accepted because that was the first time Mass Effect had ever seen a multiplayer sort of experience. So it was like, oh no, this is really, really good. But then when they brought out the exact same thing, really, the base theme was exactly the same. When they brought out the exact same thing for Mass Effect Andromeda, it very soon got stale. It does. I love the game. I love Mass Effect as a series, and I love Mass Effect Andromeda, but it does get pretty damn stale. Because you're always in the exact same position, the exact same situation, and contrary to what a lot of players believe, I guess, or at least in my opinion, new characters doesn't fix that. You know, having a new character, for example, the Batarian Vanguard is, I think, the second newest character that's added to this game. It doesn't fix that. It doesn't, even if you add, you know, 3 brand new powers for that character to use, because currently, you know, the Batarian Vanguard, for example, doesn't have any new powers. He's just got the same powers as other characters, just in different sort of collection. He's got a different sort of selection of powers to choose from than other characters, and visually he looks different, and he's got different sort of health and armor specs. That's cool and everything, but it doesn't necessarily make the multiplayer more enjoyable or freshen up at all, because it's still the same multiplayer. You're still playing the same game modes and objectives and stuff, so it doesn't really freshen it up just because there's a new character. And a new map does, new map DLCs do help out, because obviously it's a completely different layout, a completely different battlefield to play on, but they only really help out to an extent. They still don't fix the main problem. The main problem would be to either add new game modes and, you know, brand new sort of things to do in the multiplayer matches, or not add new game modes, add new game objectives, you know, different things other than download the data and upload the data and stuff. That really gets boring eventually, and I find it really boring now to do, you know, things like upload the data or take out their commander stuff. It just gets boring for me. I think it's pretty damn boring, and unless they wanted to add new game objectives and stuff, I've mentioned this in other videos, they need to add a player versus player game mode for it to last longer, for it to, you know, they're not going to add that now, but, you know, retrospectively looking back on it, they really should have done. And talking about the game modes, talking about the objectives, let's go into more depth with that. I find them so boring. They're so goddamn boring. They're cool at first, but then when you've played, I don't know how many matches I've played, probably played about 400 multiplayer matches at least of Mass Effect Andromeda already. Maybe not that much, maybe 300, I don't know. But I've played a lot. I'm pretty experienced in this game, and it is so boring. It's so repetitive to just see. You play one match, upload the data one wave, kill the command next wave or the high value target, upload the data after that, and then extract stuff like that. That's cool for a couple of matches, but then after a while, it's so goddamn boring. It's so boring, so repetitive, and it just becomes pointless after a while. It feels pointless after a while because it's just the same rinse and repeat stuff, and it really does get boring very quickly. And that's the problem with any Horde mode. Like I said, another similarity would be Gears of War 3's Horde mode, or really any of the Gears of War. They all have kind of a Horde mode. I don't think Gears of War 1 does, but I think after that, Gears of War 2 and onwards, they all had Horde mode type multiplayer modes. They really get boring. Any Horde mode really does get boring. So that's really the problem with it. They never really switched it up or made it innovative, or like switched up the game modes at all. Even from Mass Effect 3, you know, if you jump on Mass Effect 3's multiplayer now, it's very fun still and it's very awesome still, but it's the same objectives. You play the exact same mission objectives and wave objectives as in Mass Effect Andromeda. It's exactly the same. So apart from like the better graphics and the different maps, different characters and the different, you know, gameplay mechanics, it's the base theme of it, like I said, is exactly the same. And not only that, but the actual objectives, the actual things that you do every match are exactly the same, which I find really restricted and limited, and it does really gets stale and tame pretty damn quickly. So I think that's why the multiplayer's died off pretty quickly. Like I said, there's still people playing it. I still play it, and I still enjoy it, but I think that's why the multiplayer has died off so goddamn quickly. Like, no one's crazy about the multiplayer. There's no massive fan base amongst the multiplayer, you know, region of the game anymore. Like I said, in part that will be due to like the smear tactics and the sort of the destroy everything that Mass Effect Andromeda offers, tactics that critics and YouTubers rode the bandwagon on when the game first came out. You know, people complaining about goddamn eye graphics, how realistic eyes looked and stuff, and how realistic goddamn facial hair looked on the game. It was really stupid. That's not how you should judge a game, you know, or at all. That's not how you should review a game, especially when people call themselves reviewers or critics or YouTubers. A lot of people were doing that and talking about nonsense crap like that. Part of it is because of that. Part of the reason that the fan base has died, single player and multiplayer wise, is because of that. But there are other reasons as well. Like I said, the multiplayer was more innovative. It offered more. It was more fresh, and it was just more fun and more expansive than it would have sort of fought against those crappy smear tactics from, like I said, those said YouTubers and critics. It would have fought against that, and it would have made the game have a much longer lifespan. But sadly, it didn't. Sadly, they didn't really make an innovative multiplayer. They just kind of rinsed and repeated it and then polished it up around the edges, which is a shame. They should have added more. It would be cool to see some kind of player versus player multiplayer to really expand on on the the Mass Effect Andromeda sort of world or universe, it would be very, very cool to see that. We're not going to see it now because there's no more support for Mass Effect Andromeda or the Mass Effect series at all. We're not going to see that, but looking back on it in hindsight and retrospectively, that's what they really should have done to make the multiplayer last a lot longer. Because like I said, a good multiplayer can command an amazingly devoted player base for years and years, even like 10 years. You know, there's some games that people still like. World of Warcraft, for example. I'm not necessarily a fan of it. I like what it stands for, and I like that, you know, it brought a lot of new stuff to the table. I wouldn't play it now, is what I'm saying. You know, 5-10 years ago, I might have played it. And I might have thought it was awesome and enjoyed it and everything, but even that, tons of people still play that, and there's still, you know, new stuff being added to that, and that is because the multiplayer was innovative. It brought a new thing to the table. It was very original and innovative and very fun to play. Whereas obviously it's a completely different multiplayer type of game to Mass Effect Andromeda's multiplayer. But what I'm saying is, if Mass Effect Andromeda had brought something new to the table in terms of multiplayer, at least compared to Mass Effect 3 or, you know, other Horde mode game types out there, if it had been more innovative, then it would have been so much more fun to play, and I think it would have lasted a lot longer, and we would have a much bigger player base right now. It'd be easy to find matches, and, you know, whatever matches we'd be playing, whatever game mode or a different kind of player versus player game mode it will be easier to find those matches, and a lot more people would still be talking about Andromeda, and it would still be a lot more relevant. But oh well, you know, like I said, it's not going to happen now. I just thought it would be interesting to talk about why it died off so quickly, because people, YouTubers, players alike have sort of given up on the multiplayer now. Oh, and another reason, one massive reason, on top of that, that have made a lot of people give up on it, is that there's no more there's no future support for it. There's no new maps coming. There's a couple of new multiplayer characters coming, but other than that, there's nothing. There's no single player support. There's no real multiplayer DLC support. They've announced it recently, and EA have sort of killed it off because it didn't sell as many millions of copies as they wanted. It still sold a ton of copies, but apparently, several million wasn't enough, and they wanted it to sell like 2 billion or something. I don't know, but that's another huge reason why it's died off, obviously. But I think that goes without saying. EA kind of killed the game off, so obviously the player base is going to die off as well. But oh well, looking back at it retrospectively, it's pretty interesting to think about and to look at and think about what they could have done better, maybe. Like I said, the multiplayer, the Mass Effect Andromeda multiplayer is very fun, very awesome, but it wasn't enough to sort of pull the game's lifespan out to the in the way that Halo Reach has, or Battlefield, even Battlefield back then. 2 people still play that game. Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, more popular than obviously Battlefield Bad Company 2. Those are 2 examples of a game that's got a really good lifespan and a really good multiplayer lifespan that people still play a ton of. So something a little bit more innovative would have definitely extended the lifespan of Andromeda and made the player base stand out and stand for a lot longer and stand the test of time and much better. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys found it interesting or enjoyable. If you did, leave a like. It would really help me out. I would really appreciate it. If you want to see any more of my videos, definitely stick around and subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.